podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Great gallery on The Guardian this week, and 15 different varieties of Sir Alex dressed as Michael Jackson.
Good. I like it. Good work. Yeah, I mean, he obviously deserves, he's got a stand named after him. He deserves a statue at Old Trafford, and it's just ironic that it comes in the wake of one of his less salubrious weeks in charge of Manchester United. Somewhat disastrous trip to East Anglia there, Ed.
I thought you were going to say Turkey for a minute then. No, disastrous trip. And it was all so infuriatingly predictable, wasn't it? So, 45 minutes or so before the game kicks off, and out comes the team sheet. We have Giggs and Carrick in central midfield, and while we don't want to criticise each individually as a pair, it's pretty much never worked.
Yeah, I don't really know how to analyse the Norwich game. There was definitely a problem within the team. There was definitely a lack of form shown, but the decisions were integral to that happening. I think if you have problems in central midfield, then it makes the whole unit struggle, basically, because the ball doesn't find the wingers quickly enough. There's no cover for the back four. All the service becomes quite predictable because there's not that dynamism and fluidity of movement and all that kind of stuff. And Cheech and Van Persie up front together from the beginning, which that was a very logical selection. Especially Rooney was not available for selection because he had tonsillitis. Just nothing about that worked. I mean, Hernandez has been in absolutely wonderful vein of form, and he didn't have a particularly good game against Norwich, but it's very harsh to criticise him for that, I think, because he was absolutely devoid of any service whatsoever. And similarly, RVP had a couple of opportunities, but there was that one air shot which made a quite hilarious gif. But apart from that, nothing going on. An awful performances from Ashley Young and Antonio Valencia.
Yeah, both of them very bad. And coming back to the central midfield, Carrick almost racked up another 100 successful passes. I think it was like 99 and 100 and a little bit, and his usual sort of reliable self there. Giggs, wasteful. I think he was at like 80%, which is actually good for him. He's normally even more wasteful. In the final third, of course, he's supposed to be the more attacking of the pair. He was down to 60-something%, so almost half the time he's giving the ball away. That handed the impetus over to Norwich, even though Norwich didn't have a lot of the ball in the game, perhaps only a third of the time. They were able to break at pace, and they were quite effective with it. And United just, that word impetus is a good one, because United didn't feel like they had any in the game, and it's frustrating because wasn't that the same thing we talked about last year when United didn't feel like there was enough oomph about the game. And the defensive side of things, I think there was one tackle between Giggs and Carrick in the whole game and a couple of blocks and no clearances between them, right? So and that doesn't say anything about the shape, which was a disaster. It was a complete mess in central midfield in terms of who was protecting the back four. So there's no overt defensive work going on there, and there's no more subtle defensive work going on there either, and so it was always likely to cause United problems, and then a fine goal from Norwich, I suppose, to cap that one off, and in the end you couldn't really argue that Norwich deserved to win that game. They were just the better side.
I mean, yeah, the thing that Scott from the Republic of Mancunia pointed out on his Twitter feed, which I thought was absolutely spot on, was that Norwich were the better side, but they weren't particularly great. It wasn't like Norwich had to play to the absolute best of themselves to get anything out of the game. They just had to play pretty decent, and we were just very subpar. I mean, they defended in numbers, and that meant we had very limited opportunities. Pilkington's goal, obviously, absolute stunner, wonderful header, but United just looked completely impotent. One chance from Ashley Young, and then a very fine save at the end from Ruddy, from someone's header. I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was.
Yeah, also from his own player, right? Sebastian Bassong nearly scored an own goal. But, I mean, look, Ruddy made a couple of good saves, but I don't think there was any feeling that he was under pressure for most of the game or anything like that. Interesting quotes from Fergie after the game where he said that we just couldn't get a cross in, and I suppose his mind was on that because that's where Norwich scored from. But, well, maybe change the tactics. And it brings me to another point, really, which there was some slightly strange substitutions, And
yes, I thought that too.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't change the game for the better for United, and it's almost as if we've talked about the central midfield problem so much, and everyone else has, and Ferguson has repeatedly, in one form or another, said there's no problem there. He's almost become allergic to actually playing the central midfielders we've actually got, as Cleverley and Anderson on the bench, thinking, what have we got to do to get a game here?
Yeah, I mean, he brought on Scholes, which I can understand that because that's a potentially game-changing substitution, albeit I don't think it seemed to be the substitution that the game was crying out for. I don't think you can ever really, really complain if Fergie brings on Paul Scholes. I thought that taking off Hernandez was a very, very odd thing to do because he wasn't having the best of games, but as I said, he'd had absolutely no service whatsoever, and we were desperate for a goal, and he just scored an oodle of goals in a very short space of time. So in a very sort of simplistic way, it seemed to be quite an odd decision to take off Cheech. Especially like the whole thing about that Norwich game is that context is king, right? So the really odd thing about all those decisions were the fact that it came just before a dead rubber in Europe. And nobody had to be fresh, nobody had to be rested, could have played the best side we possibly got, and then, anyone gets half a knock or something like that, just leave them out against Galatasaray.
Totally, and with some soft home games coming up as well. It didn't seem quite the right game to be making changes and resting players. Scholes came on, he was effective in terms of his use of the ball. Giggs moved left and was ineffective in terms of his crossing afterwards. So, he was ineffective in central midfield and ineffective wide. Yeah, which is sad, right? Look, here's a guy who's 20 years into his United career, and it seems to be degrading pretty rapidly at the moment. And no one wants to criticise him. No one wants to see him have that Gary Neville moment. But you've got to ask yourself, what is he contributing to the team now?
Well, the thing is, he's sort of having a bit of an extended Gary Neville moment, isn't he? I mean, last season was not great for Giggs. He had a few really shining moments, and this season's been worse. He's not going quietly into the good night, is he? He's kicking and screaming. He's not reached that point where he feels he hasn't got something to give, and he has still got something to give, clearly. But any criticism that I have of Giggs is entirely about the moment. It's about his ability to perform today, now. I've got nothing but utmost respect for his contribution to Manchester United over the years. He is legitimately one of the all-time greats. There's no doubt whatsoever about that. But, Muhammad Ali was the greatest heavyweight the world ever knew, and then at the end it got really rough, and that's sort of what's happening now.
Yeah, it's a good analogy, and it's pretty sad in a way. I mean, look, here's a contrast. Ryan Giggs is a year older than David Beckham. Oh, no, 2 years older than David Beckham, and Beckham is going to move on from MLS, which isn't exactly the highest standard. He's probably going to end up playing in China or the Mideast or Australia or something even worse, and here's Giggs still running out for Manchester United at the highest level. Now, that's a compliment to Giggs' longevity and his ability to perform for United. It's also a reflection of the fact that he's perhaps stayed on 1 or 2 seasons too long.
This is all said with deep, abiding love for Ryan Giggs. None of this is meant to belittle his achievement. It's just the facts of the day. That's all. That's all we ever do. People choose to listen to us, which is nice, but all we're doing is saying what we think about the things that are happening at Manchester United. It's nothing greater than that. There's, and sometimes that's going to be critical because sometimes the things that happen at Manchester United aren't working. But all the criticism comes with context. The most successful team in English football history, we're the best. This is just sometimes we have a bad game, and Norwich was certainly a bad game. Nobody really had a good performance against Norwich. I can't think of one standout good performance, really.
No, exactly right. And when you go to somewhere like Norwich and lose so meekly, then that's probably the reason why, isn't it? Well, you said sometimes United have a bad game, sometimes United have 2 bad games, and moving on to Galatasaray in midweek and another pretty ineffective performance, this time slightly different context. And as you say, context is king, and this time a United side average age of 23, quite a few young players in there. No one disgraced themselves, but not a wonderful performance from United, and another defeat.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting that he picked a better central midfield in a dead rubber in Turkey than he did in a game we really could have done with winning in the league. Anderson and Cleverley and Fletcher as a 3. I'm pretty sure we'd have won against Norwich if we'd run out with that lineup.
And of course, Nick Powell at the head of the diamond.
Yeah.
He had an all right game. I mean, I thought he got caught in possession a few times, and that was, I guess just lack of experience. Anderson was pretty dynamic, I thought, except he gave the ball away cheaply in the final third, which is a real shame, but that's always been his problem. Fletcher, discipline, just sat in front of the back four. He's not the same dynamic self he once was. He seems to have lost something, and I think that does take away quite a lot from his game, so he's just sitting there in front of the back four. And Cleverley pretty neat, as he always is. Just weren't able to create enough for United to actually get a foothold into the game.
It was all right, the performance. There was some nice stuff in midfield. Galatasaray are a bunch of little girls, aren't they? With all due respect to little girls, just like blow on them wrong and they fall over and roll around. You got this welcome to hell, but the hell populated by little wimpy demons that don't really have much about them.
Oh, there's a brilliant one when Yilmaz dived and Phil Jones just handed him off, and Phil Jones just turns around to him and obviously gives him a bit of Lancastrian verbiage.
Yes.
Which the referee kindly agreed with and booked the forward for. Look, there was a load of that going on. Kind of reminded me of Porto a few years ago. Obviously a less important game for United, and so the intensity level dropped somewhat, didn't it? But nice to see a few kids in there. Powell did okay. Good to see Phil Jones back after so long out. Welbeck, nice to see him get a game. He hasn't had very many. He had 5 minutes for Joshua King. So kind of mix of fringe players and a couple of young ones. Certainly not a whole bunch of kids. I mean, they took a whole bunch of kids out there and most of them didn't play.
2 very odd decisions. But the first, to play Raphael, that one seemed completely wacky to me, to risk Raphael in that game. Also, Carrick, so vital to United. I don't know why Fergie did that. Any ideas?
Well, no. I mean, I guess he must be feeling Raphael's fresh enough at the moment. I mean, he could have played Marnik van Marty, who's been so good for United reserves over the last couple of years and was with the squad. But I suppose that would have left United with a very inexperienced back four, including the goalkeeper Lingard, who's still in. And Carrick kind of strolled around in central defence looking a little bit bemused, as always. He's just not quite at the top level. Well, he's quite some way from the top level as a central defender, isn't he? And
also, not nearly his worst game at centre-half.
No, fair enough. I mean, he's starting from a very low base, of course.
Wolfsburg, that one glorious. Maybe it's just the Champions League. He just likes playing at centre-half in the Champions League. But yeah, I mean, would you have liked to seen it an even more experimental lineup there, Ed? Or you were sort of cautioning against that because you didn't want to see a youthful United side get absolutely slaughtered out there? Yeah,
look, so I don't think Galatasaray are a particularly good side, and their results can show that. They hadn't actually won in 5 games, but the atmosphere that's generated, a very important game for them. I think that inexperience could have been exposed. So, if there were 6 or 7 really young kids in there, that would have been exposed. So, look, you can pick holes in 1 or 2 selections, but I think generally speaking, it was about the right strategy from Ferguson to give a few minutes to some players who hadn't had any rest key players. I mean, none of the really key players played, did they? And United got beaten, and that's no real surprise either. So it's better than being spanked 4 or 5-0 and setting some of those kids back. Unlucky not to get something out of that game. Nick Powell with a fantastic header against the bar, and looks a talent, doesn't he? I think he's got everything, yeah. I mean, he gave the ball away a few times trying ambitious balls when he probably didn't need to. But I thought he was good, kind of floating in between attack and midfield. Looks like it might be his position. Of course, quite a bit of competition at United for that position now, isn't there? He's definitely got a talent. A great leap on him for the header. You want to be hypercritical? You should say from 6-7 yards out, you should probably hit the back of the net from there, not the bar, but still a good effort. And he did all right. How long did he get? He got about 75 minutes or so before Macheda came on, and he should be very pleased with that. Powell, that is. Macheda, he's not good enough for United, is he? Amazing that he's still at the club. A very sort of sad to see the general Manchester United fandom response to little Kiko Macheda coming on, of just like, what? Why is he coming on? He's clearly rubbish. So somebody saying, "Sir, it's a bit harsh on Macheda, this. He's just playing about 4 or 5 levels above his natural ability." Well, that's true, yeah. And it's a shame because it's 3 years ago? It's 3 years ago now that Mikel burst onto the scene actually nearly 4 years ago. So he hasn't made any progression. It's been unlucky in some respects with injury trouble, and not unlucky in other respects in that he has a horrible attitude, and that kind of shows itself in reserve games quite a bit. So he'll move on, I assume, in January. Another player moving on, Josh King, got 5 minutes. He's going to Blackburn on loan. Henning Berg, obviously the manager there, so the Norwegian connection. Josh King, who's had more games at international level than United's first team. Again, he's 21, there's a big question about whether he's good enough, bags and bags of pace, but he's not made much of a breakthrough so far. You kind of suspect he won't. Oh, and while we're talking Norwegians, we forgot to mention last week, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is second championship in 2 years in Molde, and manager of the year, Magnus Wolf Eikrem, former United player, voted player of the year, I believe. I'm floating around on Twitter today if I caught that one right. And so fantastic for Ole. I mean, is he going to be in Molde much longer? It's an interesting choice for him next, isn't it? Because he'll be in much demand.
Gearley, sign him up. Gearley, sign him up. I really want Ole to take over from Sir Alex. We've had loads of questions. There's a lot of Fergie succession talk going on this week because Ole won the league, because Eric came out and said he'd take the job if it was offered to him. Of course he would. Atawate 91 asking us who would we rather have as the manager, Eric or Keno. I think pretty clear on the answer that I'd rather take the unproven artistic genius lunatic as opposed to the slightly uncertain managerial prowess driven to victory at all costs lunatic.
Yeah, a couple of lunatics. Perhaps they should put them in joint charge.
I can't see anything possibly going wrong with that.
Definitely not. No, it's brilliant strategy. You'd have to say that Eric in charge would be a total disaster, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, but it'd be well fun. I mean, it's ridiculous, obviously, but you never know. Maybe he'd be the best football manager of all time. He is Eric, after all. Now, I know it's ridiculous, but the Ole thing I genuinely don't think is ridiculous at all, because I've been asking around a bit about, because they're trying to work out what level Molde were backed to, basically, because they've never won the league before and he's won it twice in a row. And winning the league twice in a row is a huge achievement, I think. Even very well-funded teams have struggled to do that historically, and it's generally been under a very good manager that they have done that. And there's just something about Ole. There's just something about him that makes me think any manager that takes over Ferguson, unless it's Mourinho or Guardiola, maybe not even Guardiola, but unless it's Mourinho, it's a huge punt. There's one way or another, it's a punt. There's just no one out there in world football that's done anything like what Sir Alex has done.
That's the nature of the beast, isn't it? Yeah, there's no one going to take over in the same vein. I mean, Mourinho's the obvious one because of his level of success wherever he's gone, and the personality and the kind of aura that goes with him. So he would command respect. A lot of people don't like him for many reasons, the drama that comes with him, the press drama, and apparently there are people in the United boardroom that are not too keen on that option as well, and the style of football. Though Real Madrid score so many goals, it's quite hard to argue that one anymore. Ole, someone once said when Gianluca Vialli took over at Chelsea, it was like putting a learner driver in charge of a Ferrari. It would be that, It's not even a Ferrari, an F1 car in United, and Ole's just out of...
driving around in Nick Powell's Vauxhall Corsa, that's what you're trying to say, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. He's still in his long shorts, isn't he, when it comes to football management, and so massive risk, and I just can't see the United board taking that kind of risk. I mean, after all, this is a beast that's there to drive commercial revenue, so that feels like it's very risky. Would it be safer having someone that isn't going to rock the boat too much? Yeah.
But who is that? I mean, who is there? That's the question that resonates with me every time I think about this. Who exists in the world of football that is a safe pair of hands for United?
I don't think anyone is a guaranteed safe pair of hands. I mean, Mourinho will give United 3 years of some kind of stability, of course. Guardiola, who knows, I have to say I'd lose massive amounts of respect for the guy if he does take the Chelsea job, and we can come on and talk about that one in a little bit.
Surely won't.
Surely he won't, Aside from that, you look to the senior managers in European football, don't you? And some others that have done really well. You think about people like Jurgen Klopp, and God, it's such a long list, but every time we talk about this one, it's evolved. 3-4 years ago, you might have been talking about Mark Hughes and Steve Bruce as potential successors to United, and certainly would have been talking about Roy Keane. Right now, absolutely none of those will get a shot at the job.
No, and, you wouldn't have been talking about Jurgen Klopp, for example.
Yeah, and I just pulled that name out of the air, that you could probably, if we actually spent some time thinking about it, we could probably come up with a list of 10, and obviously Moyes would be in the frame there and all of that, but it's going to be a really tough decision for Gil and the Glazers.
And Moyes is a really interesting one because it's so profoundly unglamorous, and yet there's a sort of argument to be made that his achievements sort of are closest to what resemble what Fergie had done before he came to Old Trafford. But, Ferguson won the flipping European trophies with Aberdeen. He won the Scottish Premier League with Aberdeen. Nobody's ever done that. Obviously not literally, but he broke up the most duopolistic league in the world, and it's instantly returned straight back to its duopoly after he left.
So in The Guardian on Wednesday, Sachin Nakrani, of Twitter fame, argues that Rafael Benitez is the perfect choice for Chelsea because he broke up the Spanish duopoly about 10 years ago, admittedly. So are you making that argument, Paul? Are you saying that the fat Spanish waiter should take over Chelsea? Maybe he's in the frame for the United job.
That's a fact. No, I'm not saying that. Carlo Ancelotti, maybe, if he gets tired of the project at Paris Saint-Germain, but, relatively... I think Ancelotti would be a perfectly decent option for United, but I'm excited by the fact that Ole has won the league 2 seasons in a row with a team that don't win the league, or literally have never won the league before, using a combination of youth and experience, and the boy's a winner. I know how ridiculous it sounds, but if that happened, if he was the next manager of United, I would just be happy that first day. Because whoever it is a massive, massive gamble. I was talking to Bricky about this the other day, and he was saying the thing is about making the comparisons with Aberdeen is Ferguson took over unrecognisable Manchester United. It would have been like taking over, Liverpool now, team with lots of historic success and the odd cup win, but haven't won the league for such a long time and have massive expectation around them. So, that's the equivalent job in England now, right?
Yeah, very much so. And United were in financial trouble in the mid-80s, ended up selling Mark Hughes, didn't they, at one point in order to balance the books, and made a lot of bad decisions, had become a cup side and had 20-odd years without winning the league. So, yeah, of course, very, very good comparison. Liverpool are in some serious doldrums at the moment. There's no end in sight to that. I don't think the Brendan Rodgers project hasn't really taken off yet, and they are a cup team, I suppose, and they've made some really, really bad purchases over the last few years. Ferguson got that right just about, didn't he, in the early days when he was given some money and then invested in the late 80s and the early 90s, and that's, has been the base for United's global marketing dominance ever since.
And, of course, their dominance on the pitch. Let's move on to a bit of a chuckle at Chelsea. We could have a regular weekly feature called Let's Have a Chuckle at Chelsea. They've sacked Roberto Di Matteo, who won the Champions League, a week and a half, something like that?
Yeah, 6 months and 1 day since Chelsea picked up the Champions League and the FA Cup just before that. So the interesting thing is about this is that everyone knew that he was going to get sacked at some point, right? I don't think there's any doubt about that. It was just what was going to be the trigger. I think Roman Abramovich probably felt guilted into giving him the job, didn't he? He won the Champions League and he felt like he had no choice, and he clearly didn't ever want to. They were negotiating with Benitez before they gave it to Di Matteo. They were probably desperate to get Pep when Pep went on sabbatical and offered him all the riches in the Urals where Abramovich is from, and it didn't work for Guardiola, and now, the inevitable has happened and they'll go on to another manager. What's this going to be, 9th or 10th in 9 or 10 years or wherever it is?
9 and 8.5.
Yeah, there you go. And it sounds like a porno, doesn't it? Which is about as sordid as Chelsea has become as a club. And it's ridiculous, really. It's ridiculous. But it will provide us with some more entertainment because as we speak and we're recording ahead of any official announcement, Rafa Benitez is odds on to take over in the short term at Chelsea. Absolutely fantastic.
This is magic. I don't follow them because it's too depressing sometimes, but I do enjoy having a flick through Rourke Meltdown every now and again on Twitter, and today has been an absolutely vintage Rourke Meltdown day. A combination of absolutely devastated Liverpool fans, devoed, and just Liverpool fans convinced that Chelsea are now going to become the biggest force in English football because Rafa's the man to do it. He won the Champions League at Liverpool, which is a very, very significant achievement. Got to another Champions League final, was competitive in the league a lot of the time, and he did give Liverpool fans their best time that they've had for a long time. But also, he made some absolutely stinking transfers, didn't he? Real proper rotters. He unsettled their most important player and sowed the seeds for the precipitous downfall that has followed his departure. And then he went to Inter Milan, where he basically destroyed everything that Jose had built, and he had done very well at Valencia, obviously, but I'm not sure there's anything about Rafa Benitez that should have us all quaking in our boots that he's taken over at Chelsea.
Nothing at all. But then again, if you throw enough money at the problem, Chelsea will still have some semblance of success, you know. Avram Grant got Chelsea to a Champions League final. Prior to that, he'd failed at Portsmouth. And Roberto Di Matteo won the Champions League for Chelsea, and prior to that, he'd failed at West Brom. Maybe it'll work for them. Who knows? The thing about Benitez, of course, he plays quite a conservative form of football, and Abramovich has been desperate to have this evolution towards this attacking style. He's obviously got some kind of obsession with Barcelona and wants to create a mini Barcelona in West London, and that's why they'll chase Guardiola until Guardiola goes somewhere else. But he's not going to get it with Benitez.
Well, no, absolutely. And it's interesting because Di Matteo has been trying to do that. And, you know, the mistake is not sacking Di Matteo, right? The mistake was giving in and hiring him in the first place because he fluked his way to the Champions League and they slipped positions in the league after AVB left. So Di Matteo didn't really do anything to earn the job, but he was given this kind of fake chance at it because this is absolutely ridiculous to sack him. I mean, they started the season so strongly, Chelsea, and did what they've done every season for ages, which is collapse in November. But yeah, Chelsea, they're just a joke, aren't they? And that's why Benitez is going, because he's the best they can get. They can't get a better manager than Benitez, who's been out of work for a long time, and there's been quite a few jobs that he would have been eligible for in that time that he's not got. So, you know, if you're really, really serious about your career and you don't really need a job right now, then why would you ever think about going to join that mob?
Well, the Bank of Chelsea, though, of course, Chelsea have changed their policy now. They used to pay out the full contract up front, and it cost them a load of money. Now they've, with AVB and with Di Matteo, they're just paying them their normal wage for the rest of the contract until they get a job. So they didn't even pay AVB that much money, a few months' wages. And Di Matteo has a break clause anyway, so they'll pay him to the end of the year as long as he doesn't get another job.
If I was him, I might be quite tempted to go and sit on the beach for a little while, taking Roman Abramovich's money. Yeah, so I guess we move on to a few Twitter questions. If you could have any United match ever on Beautifully Red, what one would it be? Asks at Ricey-san. I think that I might choose the 2-0 down, coming back, Roy Keane with a captain's goal. You know, you could have Scholesy tackle in the GIF away in Turin. That might be quite good. That game against Panathinaikos when there was about 150 million passes and then Paul Scholes scored an absolute worldie.
That was a beauty.
I'd like to see a GIF of that. Pretty much most games that that Liverpool game where Berbatov scored the hat-trick. Yeah, that'd be nice.
Some good selections there. Of course, there have been some great games down the years. So I guess one thing about Beautifully Red is it's individual moments rather than the game itself, isn't it? There's that lovely piece of skill, and it's probably on YouTube somewhere, where Eric Cantona picks a Hail Mary out of the sky and just controls it dead and just stops and looks around and looks for the pass he can make.
Yeah, he wasn't looking for a pass, was he? He was looking around to wait to see where the round of applause was coming from first. At Salil Patak asks, should England play 5 bowlers in the second test or drop Bresnan? Question really amused me, not least of which because since they stupidly, on the back of this, finally the British public got really into cricket when we won the Ashes in 2005, but the ECB sold us all down the river by giving the rights to Sky, so I don't get to watch cricket anymore. It's a real shame. So I don't even really know who Bresnan is, I have to tell you.
Well, he's a slightly rotund Yorkshireman. He's a medium-pace bowler. Well, no, clearly they should play 2 spinners, shouldn't they? This is England's Carrick and Giggs in midfield moment. Selection has to be key because they got absolutely battered in the first test. Shall we move on? We don't have cricket on this show. Next you'll be bringing egg chasing in, and that's when I really do give up.
No, don't worry, that's never going to happen. That's not a real game, is it? At Tom Tard asks, who is Valencia 7 and what has he done with Valencia 25?
Good question, yeah. It's not been a good month for Valencia. He just seems to have gone a bit tentative, doesn't he? He won't take on the fullback anymore, keeps cutting inside and it's not working for him. So, yeah, hopefully he'll come back, you know. He's still Valencia. It's going to happen.
brilliantly at Man United Future has asked us a question. Phil Jones has been back for one game and we've already got a Twitter question about what his best position is going to turn out to be for United. We're not answering this question again. We answered it 437 times on the podcast last year. So we both think it's central defence, but I'm not 100% sure I know what I'm talking about.
Well, we should just, catch one of Phil's gurning moments and then watch which way the wind blows, and then maybe that'll tell us.
Absolutely. If Benitez does take the Chelsea job, asks at the Aardvark man, when would you guys expect him to next break down on live television?
Somewhere around March time, when Chelsea are way off the pace for a Champions League spot.
Just a quick shout out to at Happy Hero and at Brandon Ulrich 2, who both asked questions about Fergie's successor. At bifurcated_MUFC says, could we please at some point in the future release a compilation of Rantcast outtakes? No. Hey, what do you mean outtakes? This is one shot. We do this first time out the gate, no editing, right, Ed?
Right, yeah. Look, we're serious broadcasters here, yeah? You're listening to some professionals now there. Let's move on.
At Harry Stevens asks, which member of the current Man United squad would do best in an A-level philosophy exam? This is a question I greatly enjoy, and I've thought about it quite a lot. That's not true. I've thought about it a lot for the last 3 seconds. It's got to be Robin van Persie, right? Come out with it. He wants to listen to the little boy inside of himself. He's in touch with this sort of emotional, intelligent side of life. He posited the theory that neither him nor Rooney were truly a 9 or a 10. They were both a sort of metaphysical 9.5. I reckon that's good.
What, do you think it's better than fuck this shit, I go McDonald's?
Yeah, quite. I'm not sure Anderson's up to the task. I think there's something fundamentally philosophical about Michael Carrick, right? He divides opinion as much as Kantian ethics versus utilitarian Millsian ethics, That's Fergie, of course, would be a phenomenal philosophy student for A-level, I think, because he would fully embrace the kind of utilitarian, the good of Manchester United is what's important, not the kind of absolute moral right or wrong. It's more like whatever will best achieve his personal goals. That's his kind of ethical perspective.
I'm not sure it's utilitarian, but we can have this debate offline, I think, because it could go on for quite some time.
Of course, it's utilitarian. It's about it's functional ethics, right? It's not virtue ethics. Doesn't ask Aristotle's golden question, does it?
I'd like to see that one put to Ferguson at his next press conference.
Yeah, but if anyone was going to give you a good answer to Aristotle's golden question, I think it would be Robin van Persie. And then a question from at NRD Brennan asking, odds on Fergie leaving this summer? Just sense a loosening of his grip, and candidates-wise, 2013 seems like it's a good time to be hiring. I just don't know. How much do you think it depends on whether we win the league or not, Ed?
I think there's no chance. I don't think he's got the desire to leave at the moment. So, no. Depends on his health, of course. He was advised not to fly, and so missed a few games in pre-season as a result. So, if his health deteriorated for some reason, then I might precipitate a movement in the summer. But apart from that, I think there's no chance he leaves this summer.
Yeah, no, okay. I think you might be right there. So it's time for a new feature on the show. This is super exciting. Ed, it was your idea, so I'll let you tell the people all about it.
Right, yes, well, we put the question out on Twitter and on the blog. We have a new section called Rant Back, your chance to appear on Rantcast. A 606 style, maybe not live, moderated version. So if everyone would like to either send us their thoughts under a minute using the plugin on the website, or send us an MP3 to cast at United Rant, or send us an audio boo, or use the iTalk app and email it to us, or any of these other ways of recording your voice and sending us your thought. It can be on anything. Keep it reasonably clean, keep it topical, and keep it under a minute, and the best 3 of the week will feature.
Absolutely, and you said it was called Rantback. I thought we'd agreed that it was going to be called the Sir Alex Ferguson listener feedback segment. No.
Terrible. Just terrible.
Right, mate, fair enough. And for this very special inaugural Sir Alex Ferguson segment, at Rough Estate Mate, with what can only be described as a beautiful version of a beautiful song.
Drink a drink a drink to Eric the King, the King, the King. He's the leader of our football team. He's the greatest centre forward that the world has ever seen. What a friend we have in Jesus. He's our Saviour from afar. What a friend we have in Jesus. And his name is Cantona. Ooh, ah, Cantona. Ooh, ah, Cantona. Ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, Cantona.
Very good. So that was our one contribution this week. You know, I think the listeners obviously don't like this or they're a bit lazy. So anyway, send us your contributions and you could feature.
And I guess we should look forward to what's happening next week in the football variety. Mark Hughes has not been sacked. This is marvellous news. They're letting him take the tonking that's coming for QPR at Old Trafford then, aren't they, Ed?
Yeah, it's amazing really, isn't it? Hughes kept his job, but I suppose it's only in November or so. Who'd sack a manager this early in the season? Funnily enough, towards the end of last season, Hughes said that it would never happen again under his stewardship at QPR, that is QPR being dragged into a relegation battle. And they are. And I have no sympathy at all. Not only is Sparky not a particularly nice man as a manager, but his players gave up about 30 seconds too early at the end of last season, didn't they? So they get everything that's coming to them. I'm hoping it's going to be a real thrashing at Old Trafford on Saturday.
It is. I mean, I don't know. I'm so uncomfortable predicting a comfortable win for Manchester United, but it would take something. I mean, you have to say, QPR will be trying harder in this game than they've been trying recently, you would hope, because a lot of big-time Charlies in that side, a lot of people that will want to prove that they're capable of playing at a higher level, and they've unquestionably got some talented players in that side, but they were so awful against Southampton. It's very difficult. If you didn't see that game, it's very difficult to capture quite how terribly uninterested QPR looked. Certainly one of the most uninterested performances I've ever seen from a Premier League side before Christmas.
Yeah, don't look like they're playing for the manager in the parlance. So what's the betting they up their game when they come to Old Trafford, though?
Well, they will, but then I do think that one of the reasons he hasn't been sacked is because you get this game out of the way, and it's a better start for the new manager than having to come away to Old Trafford in his first game. I guess we're predicting comfortable win for United, right?
Yeah, it's not worked for us so far this season when we predict a comfortable win. So I'm predicting a comfortable win for QPR.
Okay.
I'm really not. Yeah, of course it's going to be a comfortable win for United, and I hope it's a chance for some of the players who have been slightly out of form to get back into form, and I hope United pick the right kind of balance of side. Of course, there's 2 games in a week, two domestic games in a week, which is a little unusual. Don't get that too often these days, do we? But West Ham following shortly afterwards. But you'd expect Ferguson to pick a strong side because he's rested so many in midweek, and you'd expect United to go out there and get those 2 defeats out of the system with a thumping good win over QPR, because QPR are rubbish.
Yeah, and then it's Sam coming to town. Big Sam coming to roll over and have his tummy tickled by his big mate Sir Alex. But this time he's in charge of West Ham, so not a team we've necessarily traditionally always battered. But, it's Big Sam, isn't it? We surely we win there. Don't we win we won every competitive fixture ever in the history of anything ever that Big Sam was the manager of?
Yeah, so it's something like that, yeah. It's a great quote from Sam Allardyce this week. He was being asked about West Ham's game with Stoke and whether there was a similar tactical philosophy, and he said, quote unquote, "Nobody copies Sam Allardyce's tactical philosophy. Sam Allardyce is unique."
Oh dear, Sam Allardyce. You have to say he's doing wonderful things with West Ham in terms of results, isn't he? He's doing exactly what you would expect. They play some decent enough stuff at home, especially, and they got some good players who can do damage. I mean, definitely a more serious proposition than a game against QPR, isn't it?
Of course. Well, look, they're on the same amount of points as Arsenal. They're only one outside a European qualification place, so they're doing well. They are good at home, West Ham, and of course they're coming to Old Trafford, and you'd expect that to favour United heavily. There's been some miserable times at Upton Park over the years, so plenty of fans of our age will remember 1992 and all of that. Anytime we get to spank West Ham, which has happened a few times at Old Trafford, is a good one. But I expect this to be a tough game, except of course West Ham aren't big goal scorers, away from home. I mean, they've done okay at home, and Andy Carroll isn't exactly pulling up any trees in East London, is he?
No, it's not Kevin Nolan, though, pulling up trees with his elbows by doing that little ridiculous chicken dance he does. The worst celebration anywhere in world football. I think I find it more offensive than Alan Shearer's stupid one arm in the air thing.
Yeah, it's pretty dumb.
I would like to know what it's about. I assume it must be Nando's because he's a footballer.
And obviously they're all sponsored to love Nando's, except for Anderson, who loves McDonald's. Loves it.
He clearly demonstrated that to be the case. So I think that probably just about wraps it up for another one of these bad boys, does it, Ed?
So before we go, we need to think about predictions. And of course we have a 100% record in these things this year, don't we, Paul?
Yeah, we've been our normal, completely 100% accurate, brilliant at predicting United results selves.
So, Nostradamus, what do you think it'll be?
I think we're going to beat QPR by 3-0, and I think we're going to beat West Ham by 2-1. Ooh. Sorry, everyone.
1-1 for the Hammers, yeah. I'm going to go for a radical 3-0 and 3-0. I think it'll be 2 comfortable wins for United.
Honestly, there are 2 clean sheets in a row. Have you lost the run of yourself, man?
Yeah, well, maybe.
And now it's time for us to pick a winner of the Rogues 11 contest, where you get to win a really, really nice scarf. Alright, so after much discussion, there's a few honourable mentions we'd like to give out first. At Timo Bevan came up with an excellent one based on alcohol, cheating and opponent hatred. Barthez, Stam, Rio, McGrath, Best, Keane, Ince, Giggs, York, Rooney, Cantona. Impressive and Rogues all. One of the funnier ones, at bifurcated_MUFC, went for a handsome Rogues 11. Bailey, Jean Ev, Laurent Blanc, Ronnie Johnson, Clayton Blackmore, Lee Sharp, Bex, brackets captain, Giggsy, Eric, Sheringham and Rude. Interesting taste you've got there. I don't know, I'm not sure I totally go with all of those.
Gary Neville, a handsome rogue. He's definitely a 10-pinter, is Gary.
An excellent one from @Dom McDowell saying Bosnich, Walwork, Ferdinand Moran, Mickey Thomas, Keane, Ravel Morrison, Sharp, Cantona, Meredith and Georgie Best.
Yeah, no, pretty good. Drinking, drugs, allegedly, gambling, betting, might be a bit of domestic violence thrown in there, just for good measure.
A very special mention to Anton Alfie, whose Rogues 11 was Neville, Keane, Cantona, Rooney, Best, Stam, Brown, Butt, Ferdinand, Schmeichel and the mighty Bebe, which is a decent Rogues 11, but the very best thing about it was he made a stunning piece of artwork, and if the competition had been based on most creative submission, he definitely would have won. But the winner of this lovely scarf is at APT1986, who came up with Bosnich. We all know why he's a rogue and don't need to mention it. Paul McGrath.
Drinking.
Norman Whiteside.
Drinking.
Brian Robson.
Drinking.
And also slightly questionable business dealings, let's say. Roy Keane.
Violence.
Roy Keane-ness. Georgie Best.
Drinking. Womanising.
Dwight York.
Womanising. And a bit more womanising.
Eric Cantona. Kung Fu kicking fans and poetry. Rooney.
Womanising. Drinking. Urinating.
Nobby Styles.
Violence.
And Ravel Morrison.
Violence.
Yeah, so congratulations to @APT1986 who gets that lovely Savile Rogues scarf, and thank you very much to them for giving us a scarf to give away.
I tell you what, that side would have given Norwich a game of the weekend, wouldn't they?
Yeah, no question. And then they would have taken them out afterwards and shown them what could be described as a good time if you're into that sort of thing, but equally could be described as an insane, self-destructive spiral into hell. So that does it for another show, swiftly wrapping up. If you want to get us in between shows, you can hit us up on Twitter @UnitedRant for Ed, @UTDRantcast for me. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/UnitedRant. Hit up the show page at unitedrant.co.uk and definitely leave us a rant back, either by going to the site. There's just a little thing you click on and then you just record. If you've got a microphone plugged into your computer, just record a little audio file and send that to us, or you can get a file to us in all the different ways Ed described earlier. Or it would be extremely super duper cool if you could hit us up with a review on iTunes, because that really helps our chart position and gets more people listening to the show, which is lovely. And if you want to, you can help to contribute to the running costs of the Rantcast by going to unitedrant.co.uk/donate. Oh, Ed, you've been absolutely killing it with the play-out song selections the last couple of weeks. Have you tapped into some hidden vein of secret United classics somewhere?
Yeah, I have. It's my secret stash. Got to pull out a classic now and again, including this one.
He's the great the king, he's remarkably trendy. He's done some modelling around town, wearing the best suits up on the catwalk, while the lead scum just frown. Drink it to the king, the king, the king. He's the leader of our football team. He's the greatest French footballer that the world has ever seen. On the field, it's almost unreal. Some of the things that Eric does. Superb overhead kicks, remarkable backflicks. I'm sure the guy just takes the piss. Drink it to the king, the king, the king. He's the leader of our football team. He's the greatest French footballer that the world has ever seen. He once played for Marseille, but never for Arsenal, or Liverpool, or even Man City. He had a brief spell though with the lead scum, until he realised that they were has-beens. Only one way now for Eric to go now, to the theatre of our dreams. Drink it to the king, the king, the king. He's the leader of our football team. He's the greatest French footballer that the world has ever seen. Eric is so cool, remarkably cultured. He likes good music and poetry too, performing the fine arts on the field for the boys they call Man United. Drink it to the king, the king, the king. He's the leader of our football team. He's the greatest French footballer that the world has ever seen. The end of November we'll always remember as the time he made that special move. Poetry in motion, the deadliest potion. He's got nothing left to prove. The king's still our hero, as well as De Niro. But this same move is real life. He won't leave United, for that way they're delighted, because this club's his perfect wife. Drink to the king, the king, the king. He's the leader of our football team. He's the greatest French footballer that the world has ever seen. It's over 10 years, wow, since Eric did go now. So now we watch him in the films instead. We all know the score, or chanson de mort, and he will always be a red. 'Cause 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 day.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.